Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I am your host, Kieran. I want to start this conversation with a bit of context. I say this every time, and so everyone that's part of this knows this is what I do, but I think for today, we're talking about a few things that I think can offer a lot of DMs later. So I just want to set the stage. So because what we're talking about today doesn't just live in our homes, it also lives in our relationships. It lives in history and in the way we've been shaped by what we inherit and what we experience. So a lot of us, children of immigrants, grow up in environments where care shows up through action, through sacrifice, through discipline, through expectations, and a strong focus on building a stable future. And so alongside that love/care, there can also be this pressure, misunderstanding, or even unspoken expectations that maybe we don't always have the language to name while we're living through it in real time. And a lot of us growing up within systems shaped by what we now understand as intergenerational trauma have a lot of interesting, I think, layers when it comes to this. So this is the idea that the experiences our parents and even grandparents went through. So things like migration, financial hardships, displacement, or even emotional suppression, and there's like tens of hundreds of more things in this list. They don't just end with our parents/grandparents. They actually get passed down through their behaviors, their actions, their beliefs, and even the way we relate to ourselves and others. All of that is impacted, and sometimes it's not done most times it's not done intentionally. So there's also this growing research in epigenetics, which looks at how stress and trauma can shape how our genes are expressed across generations. So in the most basic way, it suggests that what our parents went through can influence how we as their children experience pressure, safety, and stress, even if we didn't go through the exact same things as them, because of how we're exposed to it in your utero. And when you layer that with the cultural expectations, I think where success is often tied to stability, money, and reputation, we start to see how certain patterns form and how our family ecosystem is built. And so high achievement becomes the goal. Emotional expression might take a backseat. And balance can sometimes feel more like pressure than peace. And we also know that in many immigrant communities, mental health is still heavily stigmatized, which means a lot of young people are navigating anxiety, burnout, neurological disorders, and all of that impacts how their identity is forming and struggling without always having the language or support for it. So often you hear my generation and generations before me say things like to ADHD, oh, everyone has it, get over it. That's just an excuse. But that would be similar to telling someone with a celiac disorder disease that their dietary issues are also an excuse and get over it. But somehow when it comes to our body and physical ailments, we can understand it better when it's mental health. It's not seen, it's felt. And so there's a lot of fear around openly sharing and talking about disorders, anxieties, and things like that. And the reality is, our kids, even us, we're we're acting them out. And so it's like better just to talk it out than to act it out. So today's conversation is not about blaming. And you guys know this. We always say this, and I will continue to say this. We never here at MFU point fingers, blame people. We like to expose and we like to uncover systems. So it's never an individual thing. And so for anyone listening today, or if you're with us today and you find yourself having a moment of defensiveness as we go through some of this, I actually invite you to like get curious about that. Don't judge it. Don't judge yourself. Don't judge us, but like ask yourself, okay, so like, why am I so activated right now? Is it about love? Is it about protection? Is it fear? Is it something that you've never really had language for? And I say this to the white people when I'm talking about white supremacy all the time. And so I say this as well to the system of intergenerational trauma. This is not people. This is a system. And maybe keep in mind that sometimes defensiveness, so that little thing that happens to us when we're not sure how we feel when someone says something, it's often just another way of caring that hasn't had space to be understood yet. So give yourself grace, give that defensiveness some grace. It's just that maybe your mind and heart are catching up to something that you haven't quite understood yet. That's actually been happening before you for a long time. So now I'm going to introduce our guest. To have this lovely conversation, I want to bring in someone who's actually living all this in real time. So I'm joined by Harvi. Harvi's in grade 12 and she's graduating this year. Yay! And she's off to her next chapter is studying psychology, which melts my heart because anytime brown people or BIPOC enter the mental health field, I love it. We need it. The more of us that look like us are working through some of these mental health issues, some of the complex ones, I think we can start to break through that stigma better. And so I think this is exactly why today's conversation matters. And Harvi isn't necessarily speaking from hindsight, maybe from some things when she was quite a bit younger, but this is really about the fact that she's in it. She's navigating pressure. She's navigating expectations. She's building her identity through all of this and learning what it means to grow up in a home shaped by immigrant experiences right now in real time. And so what has stood out to me about this wonderful young woman is, first of all, the level of emotional maturity. Kudos to her mom. There has been really good work done here between both mother-daughter, but it's also her curiosity. She's really curious and starting to ask questions, reflecting on things as they're happening, and trying to understand both, not just her own experience, but also her mom's. And not even just her mom as an individual, but all immigrant parents. So it's not really centering her and her mom, but it's centering the experience that many of us, children of immigrants and our parents, go through at some point in life. So I appreciate this because even in the consult, I loved watching how she was speaking, and none of blame, none of judgment was coming out, but a lot of curiosity, which is a skill that you need in psychology. So you're already on it. So today's not really like an interview with Harvi. It's a conversation between generations. And while we were preparing for this, I think what I thought maybe we could do is, as we talk about some of these experiences, we can start to put a name to it. We can start to maybe lay out a foundation, almost like a little guidebook. If we were going to create one, what would that look like? And nothing that has perfect answers or fixed rules, because I don't live like that. But one that tries to maybe make sense of what it's like to grow up between cultures, expectations, love, pressure, and all the stuff in between. And if I had to give this guidebook a title, it'd be like, we turned out fine, ... but like, did we ? And then it'd be like a guide for immigrant parents and their children, and like everything we're still figuring out in between. So that's kind of like the realm that we're going to be in today. No perfect answers, just real experiences. Harvi, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, thank you for asking. I'm good. I'm really excited. I'm excited for today. I'm excited that you reached out, and I'm looking forward to what today's conversation brings with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited to just have a conversation that's hopefully relatable to people and kind of is welcoming into a space where we can actually talk about things that we've been through.
Yeah, exactly. So let's
Mhm.
get into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's do it. So I have turned this into like my ritual question. I like to ask all my guests at the beginning, but this is going to be a little bit different because usually I ask them to get in my time machine, it's safe, and to go back to the past and to pick an age. Tell me what that age is, and then what would they tell themselves at that age? But you have a choice. You can get into this time machine. I've done some updates to it. So you can go to the past and you'd have to tell me what age and what you would want to say to you in that age. Or you can get into the time machine and go to the future and what age you would want to talk to yourself at and what would you want to hear from yourself in the future. So either you're going to go tell your little Harvey something or you're going to go and hear something from big Harvey. Which past or future, what button am I pressing?
Okay, so let me just go over this. So go to my past
Yeah.
and tell little me something.
Yeah,
or
pick
go
an
to my
age.
future.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Or
yeah.
go to my future and hear something.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say future.
Oh, okay. This has never
Yeah.
been done. You're the
Go
first.
different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what age are you going to go meet up with?
Let's say 25. Like I feel like that's a solid age.
Yeah, solid
Yeah.
age. You can definitely call 25 quarter of the century. So what do you want to go and hear from yourself at 25?
I think that I would find the most comfort and fulfillment in hearing that not everything went to plan because I'm very type A. So I would like to hear that not everything went to plan, but it worked out anyway. I think that I would feel less anxious. I would feel more comfort in that.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
definitely agree to be told, hey, you're good, live your
Yeah.
life a little bit. So what do you
Exactly, yeah.
hope? What do you hope feels different from that version of you compared to you now?
I think me now, I put a lot of pressure on being absolutely perfect at everything, which is unrealistic because like perfection is subjective, right? Like my version of perfection may be different from yours or my mom's or my sister's, etc. And I focus like really hard on being perfect right now, but like once again, it's not realistic. So I think in the future, I can focus on being myself rather than just being perfect and doing things that I find purpose and meaning in rather than just pursuing things because they look good on a resume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I hear you talking about is like being able to be something that is genuinely you versus maybe trying to like fit into something that society, school, family, everything, your resume, all that's expecting of you. And I honestly, I love that. I love that for you. And I think in a lot of ways, this conversation sits right in between those two versions of like the past us and the future us, like where we've come from. That's important to carry with us throughout our journey. And also what we're trying to become at all ages. So that's a great answer. Alrighty. All right. Let's get into it. So let's do chapter 1. So you get to like be the co-editor of this. So you can say, well, maybe we call it something else. So your name's going to also be on the cover of this, and you'll be a part of the book tours as well. So chapter 1, when you and I were meeting prior to this, something that really stood out to me is you really wanted to talk about like it's so important for us at all ages to understand the experiences of our caregivers because that is going to help us figure out where we're going. So I thought maybe chapter 1 can be like what our parents carried, and we can talk a little bit about that. As we're unraveling this. So when you think about your parents or, maybe even in general as a young person who would think about their parents and their parents' journey, like what do you think What do you think that our parents carry when they're raising us? If it's easier for you to answer, like for you specifically, or if you want to answer in general, but
Yeah.
either is great. So what do you think they carried while they were raising you?
I think that, so like, first of all, like I grew up in a single parent immigrant household. So right off the bat, that's just already a tricky situation to be in,
And it's
especially like,
rare.
yeah, it is, especially coming from my mom's generation, because that wasn't like the typical, like you wouldn't see like a brown woman at that young age, like divorced with children and an immigrant. Um, so I think that title is like something that she had to carry, and that already held so much weight, and not like positive weight, negative weight, was like being a young divorced brown woman in this new country that she wasn't familiar with, because she did move here alone. So I think navigating all of that alone nonetheless was definitely one of the most challenging things that she carried.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. And so what do you think mattered most to her because of what she went through?
I think to her, in that moment, especially, I've had conversations with her about it. She doesn't say it directly because, like, once again, like, she didn't really have a lot of spaces where she could openly talk about and express her feelings, which has changed now, which I'm grateful for. But I think stability and security. I think those two were the most important things, and whether that meant financial or relationship stability and security, just stability and security, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of that, I would imagine, comes from not having the option of slowing down for her. So
Yeah.
survival is the priority, and so therefore it's like, okay, I already know what I don't want my kids to have to go through. And
Mhm.
so then you can already understand stability and security, why that means a lot to her. And I think for a lot of us, those are two common values a lot of our immigrant parents carry. But I think what we're doing right now is like figuring out why to your mom was that a priority, and that's going to be
Right.
different in another household. But when you link that together, you already are like, okay, I can sit back. I get this. This
Yeah.
isn't about me. This is about what she wanted to do different for you, whether that's something you agree with or not. That's the place that she's coming from. So
Yeah.
I wonder if what we experience now as pressure from our parents is actually protection from them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. That's an interesting perception of it for sure.
Do you feel like stability, money, or security were directly things that were really important and talked about in your home? Or do you think that came indirectly based on her own experiences and what she wanted for you and your sister?
I think it was absolutely directly. Growing up, like my sister, from a very young age, she knew that she wanted to be a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm thinking about it, it's funny. I've never asked her why she's wanted to be a lawyer, because when you hear like a young brown female or male say that, "Oh, I want to be a lawyer," I feel like you immediately think you're like, "Oh, right, like, one of the big three, lawyer, engineer, doctor," like I'm probably because of like the money, right? Like lawyers get paid a lot. That's just the stereotype, I guess. But like, yeah, growing up, my sister knew from a very young age that she wanted to be a lawyer. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of curious on where that came from, because I also heard a lot growing up. My mom always used to tell us that financial security and stability is the most important thing in surviving the circumstances that this world will bring you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just kind of how it panned out.
Mm-hmm. And like
Yeah.
the other intersection to that too is like she's raising two females. And I
Hmm.
think financial stability for women is like a whole different conversation in itself. And it's necessary no matter how grateful we are to have a partner or parents or life or money's provided. I think in
Hmm.
theory, we all love that. But at some point, because as humans, we're meant to thrive and grow. So at some point, we start to feel our sense of worth is being impacted and not. And if anyone out there could do a TED talk or have this conversation, it would be a brown woman, an immigrant woman. A lot of our moms didn't have the jobs, and or they worked 6 jobs as well. And so like it really, again, depends on the household, but either way, having some financial freedom, it is a kind of like a must, in my opinion, for women. Or
Absolutely.
it gets dicey eventually. You look back years later and it's like, oh shit, like I could have, should have, would
Yeah,
have, or whatnot. But in your perspective, your experience, it was necessary. Like your mom didn't have someone else to rely on. So
exactly. Yeah, and I
yeah.
think the reason why like she makes it so like she made it such an important factor of our lives, she kind of like conditioned us to believe this as well, is because she told us that nothing in life is guaranteed. So like,
Yes.
sometimes my sister and I would joke, we'd be like, oh, if it doesn't work out, we'll just marry rich, you know?
Yeah.
And she'd get so mad. She'd be like, no, no, because nothing in life is guaranteed. So you need to make sure that you have at least $1 million in your pocket. And you
Mhm.
know, like we'd brush it aside, of course, but like I think she's right, honestly, especially being a young brown woman growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, she's right. It's not guaranteed.
Mhm,
Absolutely.
mhm.
And so if we were maybe like a little guided layer of this chapter of getting to know our parents to better understand why we are at, whatever intersection we're at, if this was in our guide, maybe it's something that would remind us a lot of what we experience didn't really start with us. It doesn't start with just when you were born. It doesn't just start when I was born. The same goes for my kids. So I think we have to remember that, okay, kind of started before us, but we still get to decide what we want to do with that information, what we still want to do with that. So like to backpedal a little bit and to learn a little bit about our parents and their circumstance and where their value system, belief system came from, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we're going to take and do with ourselves. And this is a place where parents have to understand that too. But it's helpful to figure out where are we going and like, okay, what do I want to do with this information, knowing this about my parents. And
Yeah,
we didn't even cover in this section, like, again, what kind of traumatic experiences and whatnot. And when we talk about trauma, like an experience is traumatic because whatever happens immediately after it, that care is what helps you manage it. And so it becomes traumatic because there was no immediate support, safety, therapeutic responses, whatever it is. And so I know we use that word all the time,
exactly.
like, oh, I'm so traumatized, blah, blah, blah. But no, like we can all experience it, but some of us get care in our traumatic experiences to move forward. A lot of our
Absolutely.
parents had to live with it.
Yep.
And their care was time. So, because they had
Mhm.
to adapt to it, essentially. So, I think that's another layer that we have to keep in mind too when we're figuring out like how do we as kids of immigrants and how do immigrants who are raising kids in a different country sort of like coexist, right? And I don't know if you want to add to that before we move to the next chapter.
Yeah, sure. Like I can just say this one thing, like about like trauma you mentioned. Even back then, like when my mom was growing up, I'm sure other people in her generation as well growing up in India, when they would go through a traumatic experience, I feel like they didn't know that this was a traumatic experience until way later in their life, or maybe they never even figured it out because they were never given the space to question it. Like they were never allowed to engage in curiosity, like, oh, but why do I have to do this? Or why are you doing this to me? It's just the way things were was the way things were. Like there was no changing it.
Yeah. And a lot of the community, I think it's divided whether they want to throw in that extra layer of like, this comes from when your country gets colonized, you have people coming in and telling you what you can and can't do, where you can and can't be. So then that becomes like ingrained throughout the generations. And so
Hmm.
maybe our parents weren't directly impacted during the colonization era, but they definitely experience, if we think of, again, intergenerational trauma, the
Hmm.
behaviors and beliefs that their parents and their parents carried, and then also through the epigenetics. So if your grandparents are experiencing something terrible and they don't have safety, then that gets carried through to your mom, who may not have been there in that time, but would have felt something from it too. And I think you're right in that there's nothing over the generations that gives us space to be able to say, what is this? But before colonization, there was a lot of that space. Our ancestors had very solid ass therapeutic ways to grieve and to manage and process, right? And expression was huge for us.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is interesting when, we grow up in a home where it's like, don't ask, don't tell. And we start wondering, where does that come from? It's not necessarily our parents. They were told that, and then they were, and then you back it up to, okay, but like, where did that come from? Well,
yeah,
that's what happens as a community when somebody takes over. And
exactly.
you learn to walk a straight line, and that's kind of what you do. So, and here we are now, like having all this knowledge, access through phone and all these different ways to be able to learn a lot of this and say, oh, okay, this makes sense. So, yeah. So,
exactly.
If we were to move to chapter 2 in our guidebook, and we're getting ready, they're already asking us to tour, and go on a signing soon. Maybe chapter 2 is about, okay, this mentality of what being good means. So we understand where our parents come from. They have these expectations and hopes and all this of us. And a lot of what we feel is this, in my circumstances, being the good daughter. And so I'm curious if you internalize that or experience that growing up, like, what was it like to be a good daughter, quote unquote, in your home?
I like this question because it makes me think back to this very particular moment when I was younger. Okay, so I guess being a good daughter to me has always been making my mom proud. And it reminds me, like the moment I was talking about was, it was a weekend or something. My mom had just come home from work, like we were home with a nanny or a babysitter. And so my sister was always more studious than me growing up. Like I was always the creative one, I guess is the best way to put it. I wouldn't like school. I don't think I knew all my multiplication tables, and it was quite evident that I was not the studious one. And so for the first time, I actually willingly picked up a book and I read a full chapter of it. And I remember running up to my mom when she got home and I'm like, Mom, I just read a full chapter of this book. And she was just like, wow, that's a really great job. Like, I'm proud of you. So I think for me personally, it's always been making my mom proud.
Yeah. That's a cute story.
And
I'm glad that she responded in the way she did too. Because sometimes we miss opportunities, and I'm wearing my parent hat, and kids will remember things, like even as myself as a kid, I remember something and parents have a different recollection. So it's hard to be present when you are a single mom, trying to make a living, trying to put food on the table. And for all immigrant parents, that was always hard for them to switch and be present because we're always thinking about the next thing. So were there like unspoken rules of what it meant to be a good kid in your home?
Unspoken rules. Definitely. I don't know if I have like a specific name for it, but it was definitely all of the very, like the basic ones growing up in an immigrant household. It was like get good grades. For like us personally, my mom was always really big on community service because in our religion as well, because I come from a Sikh background, so there's this thing called seva. So seva means like basically like serving, right? So my mom was always really big on giving back to the community. So whenever we would do volunteering, we there was always this unspoken rule of you had to be the best volunteer there or there's no point of you being there. Like you need to make sure you're actually making a difference or you're just taking up space. So I guess that was just it was very harsh, but I think it got me to where I am now as well. And she integrated that into us from a very early age, that giving back to your community is very important. Otherwise, it won't give back to you.
And that's how I met your mom, is through community events too. And then I met
Yeah.
you, and you would always be volunteering at these events. And I think I appreciate the discipline in her, and I think integrity is a word that comes up. Like that's,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of that generation is built off like you are a walking billboard, you're advertising for yourself, and so
Yeah.
the actions you put out are truly who you are as a being. And then sometimes that gets taken, I think, to like a very extreme level of then worrying about the, you know, quote unquote, what will people say, which is like a huge phrase in our community. We do things based on what we think the community wants because we are such a collective community. And so I think sometimes it's hard to know where the line and the boundary essentially is. And I also think it's interesting because being good like doesn't just stay as behavior. It does start to become, especially for us girls, our identity. And I'm curious for you. So there's things that, you know, are expected and unspoken rules, but then like, how did that carry out for you outside of your home and with friendships and school? And now you're applying to universities. And so do you feel like there's a pressure to carry that being a good girl or good woman?
Yeah, I can't say that I really lived my teenage years because, like, especially growing up with an older sister, like, I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this, but my sister would go to parties, and I remember going with my mom to pick her up at, like, sometimes 1 a.m. from these parties, and I was excited. I was like, wow, like, she's coming home with, like, glitter all over her face, like, this is so exciting. And then high school hit, and I didn't go to a single party, actually. I think the one party that I went to was a Model UN function at someone's house, and there was alcohol there. And I had like the ability, my mom knew there was going to be alcohol there. I had the ability to try. Like I had the ability to be like, oh, like I'm going to do something a little rebellious, but I didn't. Like it's like I wanted to, and you know, like everyone else was drinking, but I couldn't. And I don't know if I can put a name to it, but maybe it was that whole being a good daughter, right? So I think in terms of like high school and living it up in high school, it came out in that way. And then with friendships, it's the same thing. Like all of my friends, I guess, really love to party, and they're not so stressed about their every single move and every single decision they make because they're just trying to, I guess, live their life, is their perception of it. And I feel like that puts like a big wall between me and the other kids in my generation because like my version of living it up would be going to a community event and like putting in like 5 hours of work. Whereas their version of living their life, living it up is like going to a party.
Coming home with glitter on.
Glitter on their face. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting because as we're doing this in real time, like for those of us women that are in 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s and on, it's like for me, it's really, I feel like I'm in a time machine going and meeting past me because of like, you only know what you know and you're wondering about your future. And yes, I'm still wondering about my future, but a lot of now comes from my past. And I think for a lot of us, we learned early on that being good meant being easy, like out of the way, not needing too much. And it meant when you look to your parents, they're content, they're happy because they're also stressed with other life things going on. And we don't want to add to that. And you know, good for you to recognize, okay, like what are my friends doing versus what because a lot of us didn't have the North American teenage experience. Like I had a little bit of it, but my parents were really strict too. And so like I didn't have a whole lot of it, but I got to live my 20s. And I think where some of this good girl mentality carries out is when we get our jobs. And then our boss is like an authority member, like a parent. And then we want to do the same thing. We want to be good. We want to follow. We want to make people proud. And it's this like ongoing pressure that we put on. And I know a lot of women that did the thing they were supposed to, which was go get married. And then they get to their 30s, 40s, 50s, and then they're like, wait a minute. I did this because this is what a good girl was supposed to do. It's not necessarily what I wanted, and I don't even know what I want.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I hope you, well, maybe instead of my hope, let me ask you, what are you doing for yourself to build your identity and ask yourself, like, do you ask yourself, like, what does Harvey want? What would Harvey do? Do you ask yourself that?
I do sometimes. But like for me, because I'm still young, it's hard for me to kind of flip situations around or circumstances around because like I'm kind of at that weird age. Like I'm 17, high school's ending, moving on to university, extracurriculars, I'm starting to age out of those as well. I'm just kind of being like picked up and like plopped in like a bunch of new situations, and they're not situations that I can control. So I think the best thing that I'm doing for myself right now is trying to find purpose in these new situations and meaning, because like how I respond to it, I think is the most that I can do. And this is actually something that I picked up from an English class that we just had recently. My teacher was teaching us about this article about Viktor Frankl and his famous book. I don't know if you've heard of it, but A Man's Search for Meaning. And it kind of talks about there's more to life than just being happy. So I kind of picked it up from there, that the most we can do is just choose how we respond to the situations that we're in.
Yeah, I think that's so well
Yeah.
said, and it'll be a good mentality to bring to mental health school because we learn a lot about reacting versus responding in high crisis situations when you're doing therapy, when you're working with clients, like, and we teach clients this too, and it's a parenting 101. It's like we react first and foremost, but there is less control in that. So the choice you have, again, control versus choices. Yeah, like what's my response? How do what can I be in charge of in this moment? I can't be in charge of what my friend did or didn't do, or what my boss said or didn't say. I didn't get into that grad school and all those things. But okay, yeah, you're right. Like, what can I do? And I think good for you, because that's going to help you go on the path of reality, which is like, if we want happiness, then we have to feel all the other emotions to understand happiness. And I think somewhere in here we might talk about other emotions. So maybe I'll leave that. And if we don't, we can go back to it. But good for you to pick that out of the book and think, okay, because maybe this chapter is really about noticing how being good shapes who we think we have to be versus questioning that a little bit of like, okay, but what do I want to be? You know, of course I'm going to respect my mom. Of course I want to make my mom proud. In that, am I going to lose myself? In that, am I going to gain something? Because at the end of the day, you are navigating your own vessel, and your feelings and your rewards, behaviors, everything is, you're responsible to it. And so at some point it's like, okay, we have to figure that part out. So good for you to start there and let that. Anything you would add in the being good part of this before we move to the next chapter?
Yeah, for sure. I think like being good, once again, is subjective, just like being perfect.
Yes.
Because like your version of good might be someone else's version of bad. So I think not to let these confinements and expectations get to you if you're experiencing the same thing.
I love that. And I'm gonna follow that too. That's a good reminder as well. That's something we can always be reminded of. Absolutely. Okay, so chapter 3 would be this myth of balance. So it's an interesting word in our community because, well, let's get into it. So have you ever felt like, well, first of all, have you experienced what feeling balanced is? Is that something that you guys talk about? Is that part of life, or is it like more about feeling full and going to fill that cup all the way and beyond?
Yeah.
Let it pour over or whatnot.
Yeah. I can talk about like what both of those mean to me, and then like how my mom and I have talked about it like growing up. So I think to me, balance means like alignment almost. Like everything feels like I'm supposed to be where I am right now in this moment. And then I think feeling full is associated with feeling fulfilled with where I am. So I think to me personally, I would say I'm neither, which is kind of harsh, but I'm both and neither at the same time because I feel like there, I guess it's, I don't know if this is considered spiritual, but like I believe in you're where you're meant to be in the moment and not to let the what ifs cloud your judgment, because if you were supposed to be there, then you would be there, but the timing's just not right. So I think that's kind of what shapes my perspective on balance and alignment. And then I think fulfillment is once again subjective, and I'm probably going to say that a lot because a lot of things are subjective. Because fulfillment to me will ultimately definitely be making my mom proud in the end, and making her proud while doing something that I love and I find purpose in, not something that she wanted me to do.
Yeah, and that's so attainable.
Yeah.
Do you get to rest without guilt? Like, is that, I'm just curious if like we've reined that out of the genes, or if that's still happening in your generation. Where are we at with this rest without guilt thing? Just curious.
Yes and no, but it's less because my mom makes me feel guilty about resting, and more because I feel guilty when I rest. Because I think for me, rest is procrastination. Because so you sleep for like what, like 8 hours, 9 hours, if it's like, that's actually really great if you're sleeping for 9 hours every night.
It is. Yeah.
I'm kind of jealous, honestly. So you only have like a couple hours of your day. So the way that you spend those hours every minute counts. And especially because like I've always been a high achiever. So if I decide that I don't want to work on something and I decide to watch 30 minutes of a Netflix show, I definitely will feel guilty for that. And it's not because of my mom, but it's more because I'm a high achiever. Yeah. So that's where I'm at personally. I don't know if I can speak on anyone like else's behalf, but it's definitely a thing.
I think it's like we inherit it and it becomes our identity. But I do feel that it comes from what we observe, and whether that's in our own household, well, for sure what's in our own household, and then as well as like whatever community we're hanging around. And if giving community service and doing these things and extracurricular things were part of your life, it makes sense that you're now conditioned to be like, well, I should be doing something. I have to make it count. And you're also like finishing high school, and the world is kind of like opening its doors to you. So I can appreciate where you're at because you're excited and you want to do things and stuff too. And so that makes sense for timing as well. I just wonder sometimes because I think I was telling you this, I read this article and I was trying to find it because I was like, where did I read this? But that kids who grow up in a home where they see their moms rest, so like moms taking naps or moms laying and watching TV, impacts their own health and their like odometer of like, okay, I can stop, I can take a minute or whatnot. And not very many of us with immigrant parents really got to see that. I to be honest, I've yet to meet one person that's like, oh yeah, my mom napped, unless if there was like a health issue attached to it. But outside of that, like it's like go, go, go. So that's why I was like, where are we at with that? Because now I'm in my mid-40s and I'm like, I just want to rest all day long. I'm so tired all day. So, I mean, but in fairness, I'm in a different part than you are. So, yeah. It's just something I think to like, do you when enough's enough for you? Like, do you ever feel like you signed up for more than you should have? Like, whether it's school projects or whatever it is you're doing?
Yeah. So I'll bring up a point that I just thought of when you were talking about the parent rest thing, that just clicked for me. It's actually funny because like while we're having this conversation, like I'm also reflecting back on moments and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's how it's playing out. So yesterday, I think it was, so I was watching a movie because I had finished my work and I was like, you know what, like I just really want to watch this movie, so I'm going to watch it. And I was hoping my mom would watch it with me because that's kind of her thing. Like Sunday evenings, we always like to watch movies together. And she was like, no, I need to do the laundry first. I need to fold the laundry first. And then I need to do the dishes. I need to do all of this. And then I need to do some phone calls. And then I'll come watch the movie. And I was like, the movie's going to be done by then. Like the climax is going to be over. Um, um, and she was like, no, like I have to do this. So then again, being the good daughter, I was like, well, do you need any help? Like I can help you fold the laundry. And she was just like, no, like I'll just do it myself. And I was like, okay. So I think like now reflecting back on it, I think it has showed up indirectly in the way that I perceive rest as well.
Yeah. Good for you. You're that's really good. Like having that reflective insight is so helpful because then you're like, oh, this is why I do what I do. And not all things are bad things that we do when we reflect. We're like, oh, now I get why I do this or whatnot. And it is that way. It's like well, I'll do it. And that's, I mean, I cannot speak for your mom, but in my experience, that's her version of being the good woman, the good daughter or what, like having that ingrained that you just do all these things and you don't bug people about it. And my husband and I get into it all the time because I'm trying to squeeze the misogyny out of my boys, but then I get caught in it too. And I'm like, well, I'll just do it. And he's like, no, like you have 2 kids here, they can do it. You know what I mean? And it's like, becomes a woman thing where we're just directly taught of like, just take care of everyone before you take care of yourself.
Exactly.
And so for her, it's then everyone's taken care of because the house is this way and that. And so it's like you have understanding for it, but then it's also like, oh, you know, where do cycles need to be disrupted and where do they need to be like full on burnt and, you know, let's start from the ground up. So in this section, like maybe this is like the area that reminds us that being busy isn't necessarily the same as being balanced. And so like for us with our immigrant parents and their kids, so like looking at that of like, what is us trying to stay busy? And sometimes when there is specific intergenerational trauma that has not been acknowledged and addressed, and or any trauma from our immigrant parents, sometimes staying busy is a coping strategy and it's a distraction. And so I think that is then passed on to all of us. And so that's something that I do too. And I think as humans, we do. It's like, I don't want to deal with that one thing, so I'll just keep myself busy. And I think that's where we know where's the balance of like being busy is good or I'm busy with the wrong stuff.
Exactly.
I'm just performing. So anything that you want to throw in this chapter of the myth of the balance before we move to the next thing?
Yeah, I think balance is false. Again, like kind of reinforcing the whole idea behind myth of the balance. If you're going to chase one thing in your life, don't chase balance. Chase fulfillment and chase purpose. That's the closest that we're going to get to balance because that's just not the way that the system's set up. For example, I'm in school right now. This is the phase of life that I'm in right now. Grade 12, diplomas are coming up. But at the same time, I'm also a high achiever and I want to do great things extracurricular wise. But the few decisions that are going to basically determine the next 10 years of my life all rely on school. So a majority of my day is going to go towards school, even though I don't necessarily always find meaning behind it. And that's not balance. So I think that if people listening, if I were to share one thing, I would say to chase purpose and not balance.
How do you know that you're chasing purpose versus balance? Like, what would that look like to you?
That's a good question. I think that's also a hard question to answer. Um, I think purpose is what it's kind of almost a gut feeling for me. Like for me, it's like I don't know how to describe this feeling, but it's just like right place, right time. Like I know this is what I'm meant to be doing, or like this just feels right. I guess it like pursuing purpose is pursuing things that feel right, that give and don't take from you.
Mm.
For example, I guess a good example of this would be friendships. So if you feel like you have a purpose in that friendship, and that purpose, like it's the friendship isn't taking from you, like you don't feel absolutely drained after you hang out with this person, then maybe that's a good friendship, right? Like that's a pretty clear indication that if this person is not draining your energy, that's a good friendship. So I feel like purpose shows up in little ways and big ways, whether it's like an interaction with someone or like a life altering decision.
Yeah.
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 It,
There you
yeah,
go.
it's a
It
hard
was a
question.
hard one. I
Yeah.
know. You did good. You did good.
Thanks.
I think and sometimes it's like what's what we said at the beginning too. Like there's no like perfect fix answers. It's just we're trying to name things that are showing up in our ecosystem of our family. And some of us are going to be carrying that if we don't figure it out without knowing it and passing it on in all sorts of way, whether it's in our personal relationships, if we have kids, jobs, all those things. And so it's just learning, oh, this is why this is so important to me. This is where that value comes from. I think we're all built off
Yeah.
of values. And sometimes we carry some values that we're just we inherited and we don't question, and then we're like, but this isn't serving me. This isn't important to me what other people think. Like I don't really care what they say. I care what my family or I think because that's important. Or am I doing the good and right thing? What is the good and right thing? That's subjective, as you say, right? So I think it's just like for us as humans to like get as close as possible to being the best version so we can leave this world in a better place than we were in it, right? And so that's what we're doing. It's so there when we know that it's not like there's perfection and stuff. If anything, this guide little book thing that we're, like metaphorically creating is to encourage us and our immigrant parents and their kids to have conversations, because it gets tricky as we become adults. And we see this on TikTok. We see that even I talk about it a lot. There can be a lot of conflict between adult children of immigrants and their parents, because now as adults, they're going back and looking at these things and then like naming them and like, you didn't do this for me, or this was unfair, or you're this way, father or mother, whoever. And it's creating a lot of divide in households. And we come from such a collective world. So it's sad when when we lose that. So the key is to like still be a tight family as we get older and whatnot, just like being okay to talk about things and knowing that it's safe to express this to our parents and our parents can express this. But everyone's going to show up taking responsibility for themselves. Right. And so this is part of why we're doing today. So I'm going to pause and do a middle fingers up moment before we move to our next chapters. I feel like this is a good place. Absolutely. So you can decide. There's no fancy script beforehand. It's what do you want to put your middle fingers up to?
There's a lot, but I think maybe hopefully this isn't too cliche, but stereotypes, because why are stereotypes still a thing in 2026? I mean, like we've progressed so much as humanity, but still like we're looking at someone and we're like, I know everything about that person, when really you don't. Like people just don't engage in compassion or curiosity anymore. So I think I'm going to put my middle fingers up to stereotypes.
And I'm going to join you. I agree. It's so sad.
I don't actually, though, because I don't, my mom, I don't want her to see this.
Your mom's watching. I'll do it for you. Your mom's going to be like, Karen. No, I agree with you. I think like we're learning so much more. I mean, even in this conversation, we're learning so much. And so these stereotypes are so outdated. And they show
Yeah.
up in the mental health world. They show up exactly in how someone looks or what. Like divorce stigma is huge. I'm sure your mom probably has a lot to say to that. Like she probably feels like it was eons ago, and she's going to still show up and hear younger women going through the same stuff today that maybe she did too. And it's like, okay, haven't we learned enough from this? But I think we're afraid sometimes as humans to challenge things and to make change. And so even if we know it's wrong, it's comfortable and it's safe in the weirdest way. And then we keep perpetuating it. And
Exactly.
good for you in your era to like question that and be like, okay, just because they're dressed that way doesn't mean that that's who they are, or just because they're that race doesn't mean. And I think that shows up a lot in, I mean, the South Asians, we're getting it a lot. And those stereotypes show up every day when you read news, when you read all sorts of things, and you're like, okay, I don't want to be stereotypical of you, sir, but go back to your area of the neighborhood where you're coming from talking like that. But yeah, I think that we can do better and be better as humans. So I agree with you. I'm with you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back to something. So we were talking about the myth of the balance, and then we're talking about like maybe right now a little bit of what we're unlearning. So I'm curious, what's something from your high achieving version that you're starting to question?
Whether it was worth it. And by it, I mean whether it was worth not fostering those strong friendships in high school, whether it was worth all that sleep deprivation, or whether it was worth not saying yes to taking a fun road trip with my friends, or like whether it was worth all the memories that I could have built, which is like pretty heavy. But that's like something that I've been questioning a lot.
How would you know if it's worth it?
I guess like I have this version of myself, like, because you can't be a high achiever without having an end goal in mind of what you want to achieve. And I think for me, it was all of the things that were absent in my childhood. So having like the perfect family, like with a dog, or like heck, maybe even a farm, white picket fence, like just very cliche things. And then having a good career for myself, being well established, financially free, things like that. I think if I get there, or like when I get there, maybe I should say manifest it, maybe then I'll be like, that was all worth it. Yeah.
And maybe not. Like that's a journey of life as you go. And hindsight is a bit of like a bitch, like, because what you know after the fact, it's hard because like if you had known before, maybe you would have taken a left somewhere that you took a right and whatnot. But you said it best when you're like timing, right? Is this the right place, right time? Those kinds of things are guiding you to hopefully make those decisions. And like the beauty of life is like we do get a lot of opportunities to redo. So you're going to hit your 20s. And then what you don't like from that, you're going to try different in the 30s and so on and so on. So you get to have moments too where you get to say, oh yeah, that was worth it or not. But the fact that you're thinking about it, I think that's good because you're carrying that with you. Like, again, the purpose. What's the purpose behind this? And then maybe it will be worth it and whatnot. So
and then like, I guess once again, I try not to dwell on the what ifs. And I remind myself that like perhaps my path is harder and I'm missing out on all of these things because the timing wasn't right and my calling is higher. I don't know who's calling, but just the calling in general. Maybe my calling is higher. So I feel like although there's a lot of things to question about these little phrases, I think when you're so anxious and stressed and stuck on the what ifs, they can provide a lot of comfort.
So what if we had this like chapter where it was about, okay, what do kids of immigrant parents want them to know? like, what would you put in that chapter? What would you want that other immigrant parents could read this and maybe parent their kids different, or parent their kids with the same idea? Like, maybe there's things you're like, please keep doing this, or maybe you're like, we need to look at this in this way. What would you put in that chapter?
I think the first thing I would put, because I think communication is a really big thing, and not only communication, but actually putting in the effort to understand the other person's perspective. I think the first thing I would put would be almost like a rule, like rule number one: the conversation about your feelings shouldn't end in an argument. Because I feel that sometimes, even when I have a conversation with my mom about maybe something didn't go as planned in my day, or something with a friend happened, like, it shouldn't end with you both pointing fingers at each other, like, well, this happened because you did this, or, well, no, I did this because you taught me to do this. So I think that's the first rule that I'd put in there.
Yeah. And what else?
What else?
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot, but I'm trying to kind of like what the most important ones are.
Well, maybe we can even talk about what you talked about. Like, what I hear you saying is like emotional expression is important. And maybe this is where we bring in that thing we were saying earlier about that, you know, in order to experience happiness, which a lot of our parents really want for us. They want us to be happy. And sometimes in a lot of our experiences, when we're sad or we're angry, it gets stopped because the parent is trying to protect the kid and they don't want to see their kid sad or angry. But then when it gets stopped, those feelings are like bubbling and going to other parts of our body. And somewhere along the line, some of us kids grow up detached from our gut and our intuition, because we're just supposed to strive for happy. And then if we're trying to be that good kid, make our parents happy, there's all those layers to it. And I think what I see a lot with kids that are adults now that really just don't know what happiness is, because they're striving for that external stuff, like the car, the job, the payment, the beautiful partner, big wedding, all these things. They go away. They're great in the moment, but they go away, and then you're still left with yourself. And a lot of what you said, like the underlings of what I hear is, it's very important for parents to start to learn how to teach their kids self-worth and like feelings of, I'm not a bad kid if I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
And I don't hate you, mom, and mom, you don't hate me, but I still have space to be able to feel upset about whatever it is. I used to say to my kids, you hate me now, love me later, because it, you know, it's like, oh, I want 16 cookies. And it's like, but you know, it's like response, like they have a choice to be upset. It's okay. Like, I'm still not going to give you the 16 cookies, but I'm not going to take away your moment to be mad, because I'd be mad too if someone said I couldn't have six, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we get afraid sometimes as parents because we just want to shush and you're okay. So I don't know if you want to add to that layer or not, but I hear a lot of emotional expression is so important for parents to learn so that they can teach their kids as they get older.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like while you were talking about that, like maybe two more rules kind of came into my mind. I think the second one, kind of going based off of what you said about parents helping their children foster a sense of self-worth. And I guess it's more of a saying than it is a rule, but fostering the idea of you're not defined by a person's inability to love you. That doesn't make you unlovable. And I think that growing up in immigrant households, growing up as an immigrant, speaking on behalf of my mother, we often seek things that make us feel validated, but we're not taught that we don't need someone else to validate us, and that us validating ourselves is more than enough. So I feel like that would be really important.
Yeah, it's so well said. And it sticks with you as you grow older. And it's the one thing I can guarantee we're longing for as individuals if we can't figure it out at some point in our life. At some point, we can't be mad at our parents. We have to take the reins of our life as we become adults and do what we need to do, whether that's going to therapy, whether that's seeking other expressive ways, whatever. Unfortunately, what happens for a lot of people in communities like ours is substance use happens, because that opens the door to being able to express comfortably and feeling. So you'll see this. I mean, I don't know if you'll see this, but some of us see this when you get together and you see a bunch of people drinking. There's a lot of talking going on, and maybe even some crying and some deep feelings, because the doors are open to go there. And I think the key and the hope in life is that we don't need that kind of stuff, apart from it just being a fun party night to come home with glitter. But it's not what we need. It's not our medicine. It's not our potion to be able to go down to the deep stuff. And so when we're not taught that at a young age, it does become harder as you get older, but it's possible. Like we can find it, figure it. But that is like my number one thing with my kids is like, do whatever. You'll do the best at wherever you can. You're not going to be perfect at school, but like I need you to get through life relying on yourself and feeling like you have worth and capacity. I mean, it'll be a little bit easier because they're boys, but still they're humans. They might not feel it. But for girls, for women, it's what the whole world teaches all of us, that we're just, we're second, we're the forgotten ones. And so we have to really ask for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like especially like being a young woman kind of going into the scary real world, like you can excel in one thing. You can be the best. You can be the best doctor. You could be the best engineer. You could be the best whatever in the whole entire world. But somehow someone's always going to find something to say about you and pick out something that's imperfect about you. But I feel like it all comes down to how self-assured you are and how you perceive your self-worth. And that's the ultimate security. Like it's not going to be money, but it's going to be that hard time where you're in a room full of people and you're kind of finally proud of where you've come. And that one person points at you and says, well, you did this, and that makes you a horrible person. It all comes down to like how self-assured you are.
Totally. Yeah. Very well said. And you're growing up in the world of social media, and that happens every single day, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, or what. If you post something and there's going to be a flood of like, yay, happy emoji faces and all that. And then there's going to be followed by comments and that's just like the basic connection that we all are experiencing and or maybe part of contributing to. And you're right, it can't be the be all end all, because there's just sad people out there that project that onto others. And so good for you. And to long for that and search for that of like, okay, where is my worth coming from? And that's like the values. Then you get to look back at my mom teaching me it's important to do seva and taking care of the community. I feel really good when I get to be part of that, or I'm going to do hard work and put in the long hours and get an A on that test, but it's not because I got the A, it's because like I worked hard for it. And so it's not always the outcome in what we get. And so I think you say that so well. Anything else that you would want to put in this guidebook for young people? Like we haven't really touched on the mental health side of things. So what's it like for you in the era you're growing up in, and how mental health is talked about or not talked about, whether it's amongst young people or with adults?
I think there's a lot of people are more vocal about mental health, which I really love. Like there's more acceptance of it. There's more verbal acceptance of it. But as the saying goes, actions speak louder than words. I feel like we're lacking in the actions part, because let's say you're going through a hard time and like it's visible. And so your friend asks you, hey, like if you need to talk, I'm here for you in that moment. But when you go home or like a week passes by, will they put in the effort to send you a text and say, follow up and say, hey, I just want to check in and see how you're doing? And like in a lot of cases, that doesn't really happen, like that follow up, which I think is more important than the initial how are you? Like obviously like that's up to debate. Some people don't think so, but I think for me, absolutely, because when you're feeling upset about something or you're just going through a hard time, it's important to feel like you're cared about. And I think that's what we're missing, actually putting in the effort to make sure that everyone feels cared about.
Hmm. What
Yeah.
do you think it would take to put in that kind of effort? Like, how would people know where to start?
It's it really depends on you as a person. And for me, I feel like even a text, which takes less than 5 minutes, actually, believe it or not, it takes probably 30 seconds to search up that person's contact and be like, hey, how are you doing today? Press send. It doesn't even have to be something that you're like actively thinking about. Like, I'm not asking you to use all of your brain power and send me a huge paragraph about how much I mean. It's, are you going to put in like that 5 seconds worth of effort just to send that text? Because that text could have made me feel way better in an instant. And I think like that's all it takes, like 5 seconds or less, like 30 seconds or less.
Like, what I hear you talking about is self-awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
so thinking outside of ourselves. And sometimes we get so caught up in our world or day to day or what
Yeah.
we need from people, which is equally as important. But it's also very important and it helps fill our cup when we think of others,
Yeah.
and letting people know that they're on our mind is so magical. To if you ever receive something from someone like a DM or text or however people communicate nowadays, it's very, very impactful. I agree with you to hear someone say, "You're on my mind," and
Mhm.
thank you. That's crazy. And that also pays it forward. People then learn they actually do that as well.
Yeah.
So I think those are simple ways to check in on each other in mental health of that. What about some deeper stuff? Like, do you feel in the community, in your household, mental health, like how is that discussed? How is that brought up? Is that something that we have to kind of do some more work as a community to bring more awareness, or do you feel like it's happening?
I feel like it's happening, but it's not at the same time. Like for I can give a little personal story. So I remember my mom and I just having a simple conversation about like how her life was like when she came to Canada and that whole like, finally figuring out like her story and who she was before she was my mom.
Oh,
And
that's a great
and I was
conversation.
yeah, and I was like, wow, you've really been through a lot. You should try therapy. Like you should talk to someone about these things because it's not like it is definitely not good for your mental health to kind of keep all this for yourself and internalize it for so long because it starts affecting the way that we show up. And sometimes we don't recognize that. Because, like, you know, when you're so angry with something that happened 2 days ago and you don't let it out at all, and then it starts to kind of manifest in everything that you do afterwards, the way that you might speak to your friend, your coworker, etc. I think it's the same thing with trauma. When it's not talked about in a safe space, you start to internalize it and it begins to manifest in the way that you show up. And the result of that was at first she was like, yeah, I agree. She was open to the idea. And then she had a doctor's appointment, and I'm like, you should ask your doctor about mental health resources. Like, she might be able to guide you. And then I follow up with her after her doctor's appointment, and she's like, oh yeah, the doctor said I don't need therapy. I don't need therapy. And I felt I was actually honestly pretty upset because I'm like, how are you letting another person define what you need and what you don't?
Yeah.
Yes, I
And
was
sometimes it's
quite mad.
downplayed too as the patient. Because again, if you go
Yeah.
back to, I don't want to be in other people's way, I don't want to make a big
Mhm.
deal, I've already dealt with it.
Mhm.
All the ways that, and the beauty of mental health services is talk therapy isn't for everyone. And I
Yeah.
know it's not a big thing in our community, but there's a lot of other expressive ways to be able to process some of these things that have happened. And so I think that's a snapshot of probably a lot of people in our community where, yeah, you think it's okay now. I've already gone through it all the, 20 years, 30 years, however long. What's
Yeah.
a few more essentially? But as you said, it manifests, and it's manifesting out through our body, and our nervous system it's trying to hold it up like a heavy car, and you can only do it for so long, and you're shaking,
Hmm.
and then and now it's going to come out in other health issues, which we see a lot is a South Asian community. We're already prone to cardiovascular, diabetes, a lot of other things that pop in for us. And so there's a connection to some of
Yeah.
the experiences that, our
Yeah.
elders have had to why we have these health issues.
Exactly. And I also feel that therapy, or like any form of therapy, is often seen as like, well, that means that there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not necessarily the case, because there's nothing wrong with you. It's just the unfortunate circumstances that you faced in your life. And honestly, I feel like everyone needs to go to therapy. And I'm sure you've heard like multiple people say this before, but because therapy isn't supposed to fix you, it just helps you become more emotionally mature, I think. And it allows you the space to reflect on what's happened and choose how you're going to respond to it moving forward.
And it's true. It's not a fixing. It's learning how to live alongside. And some
Hmm.
people will say, well, I went to a therapist and I went to another one, and they just say the same thing over and over. And I think that's also telling too. Like if you've been to multiple therapists and they're telling you the same thing, there's consistency in that. So are you ready to hear that? Because we also put up a lot of barriers ourselves of like, if you had to deal something
Hmm.
for so long, you've come up with your own dialogue of whatever it is of that really bad thing that happened, and now you're opening up this can of worms. But why is it worth doing that? Well, again, you're trying to live quality of life. You're it's coming out anyway. You just sometimes aren't the first person to see your own stuff come out. Like
Yep.
other people see it before you, and we
Hmm.
leak as humans. And I think it's like that time of we're trying to make changes. And so it may not happen, whether it's your mom or people from our generation or what. But I'm glad to hear like you are aware and having these kind of conversations. And I think that that's a good sign too, that there's maybe not openness for herself, but maybe there's openness for you. I mean, you are going to be entering a field
Hmm.
where you're going to have lots of interesting, I'm sure, future conversations with your household about, hey, I just learned this, or I wonder this,
Hmm.
as a psychologist. Also, psychologists are type A's. So it's very
Oh,
interesting that you are picking a career that also is going to go along with your type A personality.
yeah, that's actually funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's always this interesting thing between social workers and psychologists. So it's funny that you said that,
Mm.
because I'm like, oh yeah. So I can keep talking your ear off. You're great, and I think you'd let me.
Thank you.
So maybe this is a point in the conversation where I ask you, are we missing some chapters in this metaphorical guidebook? Is there something that you wish we had included in this conversation, or that you want to go back and add to?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head. However, I think that this guidebook is always going to be missing chapters, because we're always going to be developing, and there's always going to be new experiences and different experiences that you and I probably haven't had. So we don't know how to, I guess, put it into words, because we've never been through it. But I think as of right now, there's nothing I can think of.
Yeah, okay. I will ask you this then. If your parent, our parents, however you want to see it, could fully understand one thing about your experience, like what would you want your mom to know? What would you think that most of us would want our parents to know?
So, okay, for me, I think I'd want my mom to know. She's gonna listen to this and then
Yeah, yeah.
It gets a little awkward, but I feel good about the direction that my life is heading. I'm not going to end up in the streets. I know that for sure. I will be financially free and I will have a life for myself that I am proud of. And I think that's the most. I'm not a parent, so I don't know. Maybe you can speak to this better than I can, but I feel like that's the most that a parent can hope for their kid, that that they live a life that they feel proud of.
Yeah, it is true. And I think your mom should feel proud, but I also feel like as parents, we have a line and we have to then trust that we did the best. And now it's up to our kids to take it forward. It's their
Yeah.
journey. We're just
Mm-hmm.
guiding them throughout. And I think a lot of us are not trying to reject our parents, whatever age we're at. I think that more than anything, we're trying to have a different kind of relationship with them. So we
Yeah.
challenge, we question the question, because I think every generation is trying to break and then rebuild cycles. And as our community, we're just getting to this place where we're starting to understand what thriving is outside of surviving, as we say. And so a lot of my parents' generation, your mom, these generations are going to feel a huge push because they never got to do the things that, we're like, hey, thank you. Because now we can ask questions. We can take this from you and try to make it a little bit better and ask these things. We're
Yeah.
not saying what you did wasn't great. We get
Mm-hmm.
it. And I think sometimes that's the hard part is when we have understanding of our parents and what they've gone through. It makes it
Mm-hmm.
hard for sometimes the kids to be able to also focus on themselves because there's a lot of caring about, okay, well, my mom went through this, my parents went through all of this, and I want to be a good kid to them.
Mm-hmm.
But two things can be happening at once. They can have their experience, and we, as their children, or like my children, can also and should have their own experience as well. And we're not
Exactly. Yeah.
competing against each other.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, man. So I appreciate you wanting to do this. And I'm not sure if this is what, is this what you expected it would be? Did you expect something else? Like, are you like, wait a minute, this isn't what we were going to talk about?
No, I expected to be more anxious, but surprisingly, it was definitely it was more of a conversation, which
Yeah.
is ultimately what I was hoping to have because
Yes.
I feel like even myself sometimes like I portray like this very like ooh like version of myself, very put together and everything, but it's important to know that even the most put together people like there's a lot of struggle that they had to get through to kind of be put together. So I guess that was like the purpose of having this conversation for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, I think it's okay to also give yourself permission to not be put together. I think
Hmm.
we're not perfect, and I think we're learning that. I think that's been also like ingrained in us too. And you, from where I'm sitting, you're doing great. Just so you
Thank you.
are becoming a solid next generation, and I think you should feel good about that. The fact that you are thinking about having these conversations, the fact that you have so much understanding, compassion for your mom and the other generations and what you do with your time, like you're excelling. And so I hope that you continue to learn about you and the things that you want as well.
Thank you.
And at some point you'll realize people like us better when we're just real. And
Hmm.
that's the part of being put together, is because you're doing the inside work of knowing your values, knowing where you stand. On the outside, we can look in all sorts of kind of ways and still not be put
Hmm.
together. So
Yeah, absolutely.
you're ahead of probably where I was at your age. So I don't know. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. I don't know. But you definitely are ahead. So you
Thank
should
you.
feel good about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thank you so much for creating this platform where
Yeah.
we're breaking barriers.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate your support. You and your mom are great
Of course.
supporters. I see you guys watching and having feedback and being at similar events. You and your mom were at the SIA Awards, which was like really great. I got to accept an award that day and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that was cool to know familiar faces. And I see you guys in the community and doing what you guys are doing. And I think that's great because I didn't know that community existed. So the fact that you're growing up in that and knowing that is really good. And I think humbling as you get older and you're getting into psych, thinking about the community and, you know, how to give back to the BIPOC community, which needs it more than anything. So, and challenging a lot of the, you know, systemic sort of frameworks that you're going to experience in psychology. It's like, hold on a second. This is one system. What about the rest of the races out there? So
yeah, exactly.
I look forward to that. I'm going to bug you.
It's never ending.
It's excitement. It's never ending, but it's excitement. So thank you for, you know, making this metaphorical guidebook, and maybe we'll come back and we'll do another part to it. Appreciate you. And last words are yours. So what do you want to say before I hit the non-record button?
Just thank you for hosting me, and thank you for this insightful conversation. I walked into it not knowing what to expect, but I think I'm leaving with like more insights than I initially had, and this will help me write my next personal essay. And I just hope that for the people listening that they were able to relate, and maybe they made some insights about their life and did some reflecting.